There's an old Zen proverb, after enlightenment, the laundry. I've always loved that proverb. It's a reminder that our daily life is our best teacher. And it is in our daily life that we invest our faith. There's no other place to invest our faith but in our very lives. If you've ever been to a wedding, then you have heard these words. Some officiant, maybe a clergy person, asked the young couple, well, it can be any age actually, do you promise to live faithfully? Living faithfully together in plenty and in want, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health throughout all your days. That's a moment in time, but the real work has only just begun, right? Faith and living faithfully together is not just a theoretical matter, it is a practical matter. Marriage is so much more than simply falling in love and being in love, although those are wonderful things. It's about figuring out who's going to do the dishes, who's going to pay the bills, who is going to do the laundry in your family. It's about deciding where you are going to live and what schools you're going to send your children to and what church you're going to join. It's about developing your budget, prioritizing your spending, and discerning together what values will drive our decision-making as a couple. It's about learning to hang in there with each other when you realize that you have different ideas how to spend money. Different ideas on how to discipline your children, different ideas on what to do for the holidays. It's about hanging in there when one of your parents is dying, or your child is diagnosed with special needs, or one of your siblings needs an intervention and you need to leave town to be part of that. It's about hanging in there when one of you gets the job of a lifetime, but it's another part of the country, or when one of you breaks your leg, or when one of you suffers from a period of depression. John Chrysostom, one of the early church fathers, said that faithfulness in little things is the big thing. Faithfulness in little things is the big thing. That's what Jesus is saying today in the Gospel of Luke. And it's hard today, I think it's harder today, especially when we get those photographs from NASA about the pillars of creation where stars are born. It's hard not to realize how little we are, how seemingly insignificant our little life is. Each human being is just a blip on the radar. We are here for a nanosecond in the big picture. And we're all given a limited supply of talent, a limited supply of time, a limited supply of treasure. And yet, maybe the greatest gift we can offer is to invest our small little life in something grand and glorious, in the God who has created the universe that we're only beginning to recognize how vast it is. Today we conclude a sermon series entitled A Family Growing in Gratitude, Commitment, and Faithfulness, and we've spent 3 weeks with a very short verse from Psalm 50, which is a festival psalm. This psalm was read as part of the liturgy at a festival during which people would recommit their vows to God and to the community of faith, as we will do next Sunday on Commitment Sunday, when we will have one main service here at 10. We'll have an 8:15 chapel. And then at that service, we'll come forward with our prayers, with our pledges, with our commitment for the coming year, and then go downstairs and have a feast, have a celebration, as the men's ministry will provide a brunch for us. Psalm 50, verse 14 reads, "Offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving and pay your vows to the Most High." Or as the Message puts it, "Spread for me a banquet of praise, serve high God a feast of kept promises." In week 1, we looked at gratitude, giving as an expression of gratitude to the one who has given us all our gifts, from whom all blessings flow. Last week, we looked at giving as an expression of our commitment. And commitment involves sacrificing something good for something that's even greater, even better. And today I want to look at faithfulness. Giving as a response of faithfulness to the God who is eternally faithful to us. A God who is asking us today, do you promise to pay your vows to me? A God who says, do you promise to bring a feast of kept promises to me? A God who calls us to move from the theoretical into the practical, into the concrete, into the tangible elements of life. The past 2 weeks, we've heard from two couples. We heard from Roger and Judy Whittakis, who challenge themselves every year to stretch a little bit more in their giving. They shared how they came from different upbringings. Judy had never heard of pledging. Roger had a parent who was part of a church staff, so he heard about it. And yet the two of them had that hard conversation early on about where giving was going to fit into their life. And they made a commitment to pledge, to move towards a tithe, but to start small. And so they've been doing that all these years. Roger shared how giving is a spiritual discipline for him, a reminder that the pile that he has, it's not his, and he's not going to be able to take it with him. And then last week we heard from Harold and Ruby Farsi, who talked about how giving makes their life rich. Harold sharing the story of growing up with a generous father who taught him every time when he went to church to put a penny in the coffers. And Ruby, who shared how giving has now become so much more fulfilling and meaningful because she thinks of it as a way of participating in the work of God. And when she converted to automated giving, the light bulb went off that she used to give only when she came in person, but now she knows that her gift will be there regularly. Today we hear from Eric and Gretchen Putnam, both of whom grew up in a religious household and that made giving a priority. Eric grew up in the Presbyterian Church of New Hope, and Gretchen, a Lutheran church in Pittsburgh. They moved to Ridgewood about a decade ago. Before they had kids, they started looking for a church, and now they have two children, Jimmy and George, and their lives are crazy. And they don't get here as often as they like, but they have made regular giving one of their spiritual practices. So let's listen to Eric and Gretchen. So Eric and Gretchen, thank you so much for being willing to be here and to talk about this. And I guess I'll start with you, Eric. What can you say a little bit about how you began your journey of giving?
When we moved here, we didn't yet have kids, and we were still trying to kind of figure out what things in the community that we wanted to be a part of. And we had always driven by Westside Church, and we didn't really know many of the members or anything yet, but we ended up coming to service here a few times, and we loved the message that you and Penny and Liz were delivering. We love the beauty of the facilities.
When you joined, you had Jimmy baptized, you joined the church, and then at that point, as part of the new member process, you were invited to give. Can you say a little bit about kind of those early days of having the conversation as a couple, like what should we give, why should we give? Bring us into those conversations and your thinking
Sure.
at that time.
I think one of the things Westside has done great is they've always laid out, the importance of giving around time, talent, and treasure, instead of saying, look, over time in your life, you're going to be able to, do different things along those three, within those three kind of pillars. At this point in our life, time is tough, especially Sunday morning, so we're not able to be here as much, kids, sports, and whatever else. But, at this point, and back then, we felt like it was very important to, contribute enough money financially where we felt like it could make a difference to the church and to the community. And it's changed a little bit over time, and we've contributed, more some years and less some years, but I think overall we've been steadily, increasing what we're doing, and we continue to, or we plan to continue doing that in the future.
Gretchen, anything you want to add about your approach to giving?
I think it's easy. It's a very easy decision for us to make when it comes to giving to Westside, as we always have felt a great transparency as far as where the money goes.
Say a little bit about what you've learned through the practice of giving, all these years. Maybe something that you know now or know to be true now that you didn't maybe when you started.
I mean, I think it sounds cliche, but the more you give, the more you receive. It's, and it puts into perspective there's a much greater need around us that can be fulfilled by giving to Westside than keeping that money in our pockets.
To Gretchen's point, we've cared more recently a bit more about local community causes where, to her point, we can really see where the impact is going.
What would you say, to somebody who's starting out, maybe hasn't, begun to give yet? How would you invite them to consider this practice?
Yeah, I think as we've talked about, all gifts matter, and whether it's a small gift, medium-sized gift, large gift, it's not so much what the absolute dollar amount is, what that gift means to you, and what you think the contribution that gift will have.
Yeah. Is there anything I didn't ask that you think is important to say about the topic of giving?
This is going to sound so silly. I don't think I ever told you guys this, but when you guys came to the hospital when our kids were born, I'm going to get choked up. It meant so much. And the prayer was beautiful.
Yeah.
It just was awesome.
Yeah.
And then when George was born and George was in the NICU, I was like so out of it. And all of a sudden I see Pastor Liz knocking on the door. And I was like, that's so weird she's here. Like I didn't put it together that she was, do you know, like, and it's just that type of support that you don't, like, you just don't, it's so unexpected in this day and age. And I think it's like, I feel bad for my friends who don't. Who haven't joined a church, because I feel like that's missing.
Well, and you talked about the intangible. I think your tears are a reminder that it's hard to put into words some of what the church can offer, right?
That's right.
Anything, Eric, you want to add that you think is important to say?
So I think that, as we touched on, that people that are considering joining or are already members should feel compelled to give back to such a great church and great people. Everyone here has always been incredibly friendly and inviting. I think people should, give it a chance to fit into their lives and contribute as much as they can in any way they can, and come, and share the, hopefully the same positive experience that we've had in the last 7 years.
Yeah. Well, Eric and Gretchen, thank you so much for being willing to talk about this. I know it's not always easy, but we appreciate it, and we appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
So Gretchen shared a little thing, a real little thing, that was for her a big thing. Something that probably took 10 minutes of somebody's time, and yet she remembers that, and she is choked up thinking about that gift. And it's a reminder that it's faithfulness in little things, which is the big thing. None of us can clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch where all of our garbage gets collected. It is the size of Texas and it's growing. None of us can fix that on our own. But we can bring plastic to church every time we come. We've got bins throughout the facility. We can do that. None of us on our own can address the challenges of extreme poverty, but every single one of us can get an extra bag of groceries and bring it and drop it in the food bins as part of our faith practice. None of us can make this community, Westside, be one, but all of us can bake chocolate chip cookies and cinnamon buns and incentivize people to stay longer, as our youth did last week. And you guys were talking to each other across your cliques. It was beautiful. None of us can overcome the political and racial divides in our country. But every single one of us can be intentional about building a relationship with someone from the other party, someone who comes from a different ethnic background. None of us can take cancer away from somebody's body, but what we can do is pray for them, write them a note, offer to visit them, knit them a prayer shawl. All of us can do that. Not everyone can take somebody's grief away, right? But we can add our voice to the choir or lend our artistry to the gallery or to the band. And none of us on our own can write a $1.2 million check to support the mission and ministry. That's how much your giving supported this year. But all of us can take an honest look at our own budget, have a conversation with our partner or with ourselves or with God about what we feel called to give. All of us can sign up from automated giving. We've made it that easy to ensure that your gift will continue to support the pastors, the staff, the building, the water, all the things that go on to helping us provide the mission and ministry to the community that God has called us. And every single one of us can ask the question, how do I give in such a way that if I gave any more, I'd feel resentful, and any less, I'd feel guilty? Each of us can be one member of a family growing in gratitude, commitment, and faithfulness. In the end, faithfulness in the little things is the big thing, and together we can do bigger things. Years ago, I brought about 50 people down to New Orleans. It was after Katrina. It was a mission trip. There was 25 youth, 25 adults, and it was a crazy, difficult week as we saw the horrors of what had happened and what New Orleans looked like, this proud city. We were working hard in the hot sun. We were sleeping in close quarters. It was hump day, which is the day the conflict usually shows up, and we were cranky. I was cranky. And finally, one of the adults made just another ungrateful comment, and it just set me off. And I went to be alone by myself in the sanctuary. And when I sat in the pew in that dark sanctuary, I started to cry. And then I realized I wasn't alone. There was somebody else in the sanctuary who happened to eventually become the youth director, but she saw that I was crying. She came up, sat behind me, put her hand on my shoulder, and asked if she could pray for me. And she prayed, and I felt the burden just lift. And I was able to return to the work with a new heart, refocused on the real reason that we were there. And then when I returned home in my office, on the desk, there was a starfish. I had never heard the story that was attached to the starfish, but I read it and I wept that day. It was the story of an old man who used to go to the beach. As a way of clearing his mind, he would walk alongside the shore, and then he would begin his process of writing. He was a writer. And early one morning, he was walking. It was after a storm had come in, and the vast beach was littered with starfish as long as and as far as the eye could see, stretching out in both directions. And as he was walking, he saw there was a little boy off in the distance, hundreds of yards away. And every now and then, he would kneel down and he would throw something into the water, and it piqued his interest. And as the boy got closer, he finally got so close where he asked him, he said, "What are you doing?" And the little boy explained, he said, "I'm throwing starfish into the ocean. You see, the storm brought all these starfish onto the shore, and none of these starfish can get back into the ocean by themselves, and so I'm helping them get back into the ocean." And the little man, or the old man, said to the little boy, he said, "Don't you realize there's tens of thousands of starfish? You can't possibly make a difference." And the little boy, undeterred by the cynicism of the old man, just bent down, grabbed another one, threw it into the sea, and looked at the man and said, "It made a difference in that life." And that's what we can do, because the little things are the big things. So don't let anybody tell you, I hate when people say this, "I got nothing to give." That is baloney. Whoever you are, you have something to give, so do it. And do it for the glory of God.